الرحمن الرحيم وأصلي وأسلم على أشرف خلق الله سيدنا وحبيبنا محمد عليه أفضل الصلاة وتم التسليم. ما بعد, my dearly beloved brothers and sisters in Islam, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I welcome you all to the first episode in the life of our beloved Prophet Mousa alayhi salatu wassalam. Inshallah, over the next 12 or so episodes, we will cover the life of our beloved Prophet Mousa alayhi salatu wassalam from his birth to his death, as documented in the Holy Quran. The life of Prophet Mousa alayhi salatu wassalam, which according to some sources started or has happened almost 3,200 years ago. Prophet Mousa alayhi salatu wassalam was born in Egypt. So just to give you an idea of what Egypt was the center or the hub of the world. It was where the great thinkers and the great minds and the wise people would go to for the best education they can get. They were very as technologically advanced as that time allowed or permitted. In fact, so much so that a lot of the knowledge is just about being deciphered today. Military-wise, they were the strongest dominating force at that time. This will be documented by the vast range or the vast sheer size of the Pharaoh Empire, or how far it stretched. With all of this, with the best education, the best military power, the best economical position geographically, it was very well located. There was two main things that was missing from this civilization being the best and lasting even longer. So it's established education, it's established a military force, economically it's well developed, so financially they were very well off. But most importantly, they had two factors that was missing, and that is justice that was lacking, and a very weak justice system, as you will see in a moment, and they lacked one thing that enriches all of the other aspects of all the other factors that could have made Egypt much more better, and that was a true spiritual connection with God. They had these two lacking, and so therefore we will see later on this will be the downfall of Pharaoh and the people, and as well as the downfall of any civilization down the line. We will see that we saw the Islamic Empire in Spain and how it collapsed just by the sheer fact of missing the Iman factor, or the connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the justice. So once these two main pillars of establishing a good civilization falls down, the entire nation, the entire civilization falls down. So to think that Prophet Mousa ﷺ came from that period manifests or shows how great he is. As for the social demographics of Egypt, we will see that it had two main classes. So you had the aristocrats, the lords, the wise men who would be close to Pharaoh or Ramses II. They're the ones who would take advantage of the poor, the orphans. They would do whatever they liked. And then you had the oppressed, low-level people. They were the children of Israel. They were the people who were slaves. They were the people who would work near enough for nothing, but they were forced to. They lived in a very demeaning, a very low level of standard of living there. They didn't have any luxuries really. They just worked to survive, kind of thing. They weren't allowed to leave Egypt. They were almost in country arrest. They were in that place. They can't go out. They were only able to intermarry between the children of Israel. They can't move out, or they can't marry anybody out. They can't develop as much as they can. The capital of Egypt during the time of Musa alayhi salatu wasalam was called Bura Ramses, which is almost referred see, this again manifests how arrogant Pharaoh was. He named the capital after Burat Ramses, which translates, if I'm not mistaken, the spirit of the god reincarnated into Ramses. And he's made a big temple around this whole concept. And so he's really gone with this whole story that he is God. As for the religions in Egypt, they had the main religion of worshipping Pharaoh. He was their god. They worshipped him as the main god, and then they would go and start worshipping different animals and give them higher status. They had a cow as a god. They had foxes. He had serpents or like snakes. They worshipped a lot of things basically, but none of it was worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so this is where the two main factors, or the main two downfalls of Egypt was, they did not have a religion that involved worshipping the one and only creator, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And their justice, as you've seen the two different classes, or the different two levels in this society. The rich would eat the poor, the strong would attack the poor. And so not having justice and not having a firm religion from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala meant that this civilization was meant to crumble, and it was only a matter of time. Now the story of Prophet Mousa ﷺ will take us now to one house in the village of the children of Israel. This house had a father called Imran and his pregnant wife called Yukabid, and they had a son called Harun and a daughter called Maryam. Now, everything was fine. The children of Israel would go on with their daily life as normal, or as normal as they expected. So in one night, the entire village of the children of Israel heard a scream and a shout come from one of the houses, one of their neighbouring houses in that little village. So they all headed out. So when they all headed out to see what had happened, they came out to see this entourage of soldiers from Pharaoh's palace had come in to the on site, and they saw one soldier coming out of one of the houses with a knife in his hand, and in that knife he saw blood. So when the soldiers marched off, the children of Israel went to go and see what had happened, and they saw this corpse of the newborn baby there, lifeless, dead, and the mother screaming her head off. They didn't know what to say, what to do. These are the soldiers of Pharaoh, and they're used to being oppressed, and they're used to being suppressed, and they're not allowed to say anything, and they know that they will be punished if they were to speak out. So they couldn't say anything, and they just left it there, and everybody went back home in quiet. They didn't say anything, they couldn't do anything, because they knew that what would happen there, that will happen to them if they were to say anything. So a week later, after that event, they heard the same thing happen again. So once they came out of the houses, they saw that the soldiers had just marched off. They went into the house only to see the dead body of the new baby. The mother screaming again, but again they could not say anything. They're so oppressed, they're so humiliated, they couldn't speak. But then when this event happened, a third week in a row, but this time the soldiers had stopped, not only just killed the baby and left the baby there. They would take the baby's body and chuck it out in the River Nile. And from the sheer fear that they all had, and that they were used to being oppressed, they couldn't say anything. But then, because the children of Israel were relatively a large community, they almost were in separate villages, but quite neighbouring to each other. Once a community or a select committee, so to speak, from one village visited the other village, they found that the same thing has been happening to the other village. So soldiers would come in, find newborns, kill them, chuck them in the River Nile, and then just march back off. So a month later, they came to realise that 10 mothers have lost 10 sons with no answers to the questions that came into their mind. Why did they kill that boy? Why did that family deserve to suffer? And what have they done to deserve such a fate? All these questions were raised, but they could not ask these questions. They could not question it. They could not stop it from happening, just because of the fear that was instilled in them from a very long time, in fact. All these questions will be answered in the next part. Stay tuned.